All right, pilots and aviation fans, welcome. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on one of the most important ground reference maneuvers out there, the S-turn. Honestly, it's like a dance with the wind, and once you get the steps down, it'll totally change the way you fly. So let's get into it. Here's the game plan. We'll kick things off by really understanding the wind. Then we'll define the S-turn and the puzzle it creates. After that, we'll walk through the setup and the maneuver itself and wrap up with some pro tips to really perfect your technique. So first things first, we have to stop thinking of the wind as just some annoying thing we have to deal with. Picture it more like an invisible river, a current that our plane is constantly flying inside. The goal isn't to fight that river, it's to use its flow. I mean, have you ever had that feeling? Because that is literally what's happening. The whole chunk of air you're flying in is moving across the ground, and if you don't account for it, you're not going to end up where you think you are. This analogy just hits the nail on the head. Imagine you're in a boat trying to get straight across a river. You don't aim for your destination, right? No, you point the boat upstream into the current. It is the exact same thing in an airplane. We call it crabbing, pointing the nose into the wind to keep a straight line over the ground. This one idea is the absolute foundation of the S-turn. Okay, so let's get to the S-turn itself and see how this all connects. The whole point of this maneuver is to teach you how to manage that wind drift, not while flying straight, but while you're in a turn. On paper, the objective seems pretty simple. Fly a perfect, symmetrical S shape over something like a road. You want the two halves of the S to be perfect mirror images of each other. The thing is, the wind is doing everything in its power to make sure that doesn't happen. So here's why you can't just pick a bank angle and stick with it. Imagine you start the maneuver with the wind at your back. That's a tailwind. Your speed over the ground is super high. If you just roll into a normal, constant bank, that high speed, plus the push from the wind, is going to blow you way out. Your semicircle will be way too big. And then, the exact opposite happens when you turn back into the wind. Now you've got a headwind, so your ground speed just drops like a rock. That same medium bank angle is now way too much, and your turn gets all tight and small. You get pushed back toward the road, and you can't draw that nice, round, symmetrical semicircle. And that is the puzzle the S-turn forces you to solve. All right, before we even dream of making that first turn, you have to know that a perfect S-turn starts with a perfect setup. I mean it. Rushing this part is just a recipe for a sloppy, frustrating maneuver. Okay, here are your numbers. First and most important, safety. Clear the area with some clearing turns. Then, get your altitude stable. Somewhere between 600 and 1,000 feet off the deck is perfect. Lock in your airspeed, say around 90 knots, well below maneuvering speed. And this is huge. Pick a reference line, like a road that runs perpendicular at a right angle to the wind. And you're going to start by flying downwind. But wait, how do you even know which way the wind is blowing? Well, you can check the weather from a nearby airport, for sure, but when you're up there, you can also be a detective. Look at the ground. Smoke from a smokestack is the gold standard, but ripples on a pond or even the way crops are blowing in a field can give you a really good idea of what the wind is doing. Or, if you want to get really creative, there's always a more organic kind of windsock you can look for. Yep, that's right. Believe it or not, cows usually graze facing downwind. It's a fun little trick, but it's also a great reminder to always be looking outside, always observing what's happening on the ground to understand what's going on in the air around you. Okay, setup is done. We're ready to go. Now, let's actually fly this thing. And remember, it's a two-part dance, and each part requires a totally different set of moves. And here it is. This slide is the secret sauce to the entire S-turn. It's all about this inverse relationship. On that first downwind turn, your ground speed is the fastest, so you need your steepest bank to fight it. Then, on the second upwind turn, your ground speed is the slowest, so you have to start with your shallowest bank. Getting this concept is everything. So let's break down that first half. You cross the road with that tailwind pushing you. You need to immediately roll into your steepest bank of the whole maneuver. You've got high ground speed, the wind is at your back. Then, as you turn, you smoothly and constantly decrease that bank angle, timing it perfectly to roll your wings level at the exact moment you cross back over the road. Now for part two. As soon as you cross that line, you're flying into the wind, so your ground speed is at its lowest. This is where you have to start with a very shallow bank. If you bank too hard here, the wind will just push you right back to the road. Then, as you turn,
you have to smoothly and constantly increase your bank angle to counteract that wind, timing it again to roll out right over the line to finish the S.
You know, knowing the steps is one thing, but mastering the feel of it is something else entirely. So let's talk about some tips and common traps that separate a pretty good S-turn from a perfect one. These are the classic mistakes, and they're exactly what an examiner is looking for on a check ride. The most obvious one is an S-shaped with two different sized loops. But you also have to keep your numbers dialed in. Stay within 100 feet of your altitude and 10 knots of your airspeed. And of course, you got to keep the ball centered. Stay coordinated with your rudder. So, how do we avoid making those mistakes? Well, for starters, pick some visual checkpoints on the ground for the widest part of each turn. Maybe a tree on one side, a barn on the other. That'll help you keep it symmetrical. Being patient is also huge, especially when you start that upwind turn. In fact, there's a fantastic little mental trick for that. It's this idea of stretching the S. It's a game changer. When you cross the road to start that second upwind turn, don't just immediately start banking. Fly straight for just a second or two. Literally stretch that S into the wind and then begin your shallow turn. This buys you the space you need because that headwind is trying to shove you back toward the road the whole time. The stronger the wind, the more you stretch it. And one last really crucial tip. You should never need more than about 45 degrees of bank. If you find yourself wanting to go steeper than that, it's not because the wind is too strong. It's a signal that your timing was off. You probably started the turn too late, and now you're trying to muscle your way through it. This maneuver is about finesse, not force. So here's the bottom line. The S-turn is not just some trick you do for a check ride. It teaches you the absolute fundamental skill of correcting for wind while you're turning. And where do we do that all the time? In the traffic pattern. It's the exact same skill you need to fly a perfect rectangle on a windy day. So next time you're up there, think about that invisible river and how you can learn to dance with it instead of just fighting against it.